On today's AI Breakdown, we are talking about how to get AutoGPT on your phone and what AutoGPT is actually useful for about 6 weeks after it exploded onto the scene. About 6 weeks ago, people started talking about AutoGPT and AutoGPT. These were both tools that took the idea of ChatGPT, but added some really interesting features that seemed like they would create a whole new set of functionality. Now, you could tell just how interesting they were to developers because within days, basically, they were some of the most interacted with projects on GitHub. You had all the threaders on Twitter talking about all the use cases that had popped up within the first week. You had people like me on YouTube who were doing the same thing. But then within a couple weeks, people started to maybe get a little bit more disillusioned. They started to see what AutoGPT and AutoGPT couldn't really do. So what we're going to do today on this AI breakdown is we're going to talk about, one, a new tool that puts an AutoGPT style experience on your iPhone, and two, we're going to do a bit of an update on what people are actually finding useful with AutoGPT, including one use case that I haven't seen really anyone else talking about. In order to get started, I think that there were three things about AutoGPT that people were really excited about relative to ChatGPT. The first was that it was connected to the internet. It didn't have a cutoff on when its information came from, which means it could be used for up-to-date research and other sort of queries that involve searching. Second was the idea that effectively it prompted itself. It didn't just respond to human input, but it actually, when given a task, created an additional subtask list to figure out how to get that thing done. The third thing that people were excited about was the idea that it would actually execute the tasks, including spinning up other AI agents to do so. Now, I think what we've found so far, in short, is that the first and the second have really come to fruition. Connection to the internet does give AutoGPT an entirely new set of use cases that ChatGPT currently isn't useful for. What's more, the fact that it prompts itself and creates its own task list has really interesting implications as well. Where I think for many, AutoGPT has fallen a little bit short is around the execution of tasks with other AI agents. You'll often see people complain that the tools that they're using are getting caught in loops, or thinking that something has been executed when it really hasn't. Now, I will also note that part of the problem here isn't just with AutoGPT, it's with the implementations of this type of technology that people are using. Specifically, the folks who are using no-code implementations where they're just off the shelf and they're a UI that someone has prepared, obviously have a lot less control in terms of how they shape the experience of an AutoGPT to actually do the things that they want it to do. Broadly speaking, and we'll see this throughout the rest of the video, we've seen people move from very generalized use cases to more specialized use cases, and they've been having more success as they've done so. But let's talk about iBabyAGI. Developer Nate Chan has been watching AutoGPT since the very beginning and started tinkering almost immediately. And it didn't take long after BabyAGI and AutoGPT were released for people to start putting web interfaces on top of it. A few that came out pretty quickly and that we've demoed on this channel include God Mode, Agent GPT, and iOmni, which represented an even newer trend of focusing in on a specific use case, in this case, online research. But back to BabyAGI, what Nate Chan wanted to do was get this type of experience on an iPhone. Sure, it was great to have it in a web browser, but the way that so many of us interact with the internet is through our phones. One of the testers who had early access to iBabyAGI is Lauren Marie. On May 3rd, she wrote, "For the past few days, I've been testing the brand new iBabyAGI app by Nathan Chan. I'm so impressed with what I've been able to do with it." She says the highlights include developed a simple interactive web page with a single prompt, some assembly required, conducted an SEO analysis and received SEO suggestions for my website, created a full travel itinerary for a trip to Italy with a budget of $3,000 USD, created a fitness plan based on personal preferences, developed a list of tools to automate sales prospecting, made a newsletter outline with AI trends related to ChatGPT-4 and autonomous agents, wrote a Python script to send automated emails. This is using the 3.5 API, and if you look in the bottom right corner, you will see that these didn't cost me more than 2 cents each to run. So let's look at one of her examples. This is the detailed travel itinerary for a vacation to Italy. On her phone, she's typed objective, create a detailed travel itinerary for my upcoming trip to Italy. I will be on a 2.5-week excursion visiting Florence, Verona, and Lake Como. And then she put in some more information about what she wanted and her budget. iBabyAGI first created a task list, and then it started executing the tasks one by one. It looked for affordable restaurants, it looked for affordable hotels, and it gave a set of options for each. Now, what about the tools for automated sales prospecting? The objective here was very clear. Give me a list of tools for automated sales prospecting. The task list that iBabyAGI generated for itself included identify and extract relevant data from sales prospecting sources such as LinkedIn, company websites, and industry databases. 2, use natural language processing to analyze and categorize the extracted data based on criteria such as job title, company size, and industry. And 3, use machine learning algorithms to predict which prospects are most likely to convert into customers based on historical data and patterns. The tools that it came back with a few minutes later included Lead IQ, Zoom Info, Clearbit, Sales Navigator, HubSpot Sales, alongside a quick description of each. Now from there it did a thing which you see these AutoGPTs do quite often, which is kind of overcomplicate the task. So some of the additional tasks it created for itself include use machine learning algorithms to predict which prospects are most likely to convert into customers based on historical data and patterns. Use a decision tree algorithm to identify the most effective outreach strategy for each potential lead based on their extracted data and score. Implement a chatbot to automate initial outreach to potential leads and gather additional information to improve their score, etc., etc. At the end of it all, the most valuable information was simply this list of tools that Lauren was then presumably able to follow up with and figure out which ones she was most interested in on her own. Now, overall, Lauren says, my favorite things about iBabyAGI, quick and efficient. No looping. It never gets caught in a loop. It may provide the same or similar info repeatedly, though. Finishes objectives cleanly, detailed outputs, intelligently segments tasks into completed and remaining, tracks spend, easy copy and share feature to make outputs more useful. The tool is super user-friendly and a lot of fun to play with. Now, of course, when it comes to AI tools, you have to try them yourselves. And so I downloaded iBabyAGI, and my first impression definitely resonated with some of what Lauren said, which that it was an extremely easy user interface. It made it feel very fast to begin this process. All you had to do was input your OpenAI key, and you were off to the races. Now, the first thing I tried was a purposefully broad objective. I said I want to create a newsletter that can get to 100,000 subscribers. I'm interested in lots of different topics. Ultimately, what iBabyAGI spit out was kind of exactly the sort of generic list that you might expect. You could talk about dad stuff, you could talk about technology, you could talk about finance, no real specification, and obviously that was more my fault than its fault. It shows, I think, the more abstract the objective is, the harder it is for these tools to do it. But then I narrowed things down, and one of my next inquiries was about whether it could help me come up with a top 10 list of guests to have on the AI breakdown. For this, I even gave it the criteria that I wanted them to be based on popularity and reach. For this one, it did much better. It said, added a new task, use a machine learning algorithm to rank the potential guests based on their popularity and reach, taking into account factors such as the size of their audience, engagement rates, and the number of media outlets they have been featured in. It then decided how it wanted to present the information to me, saying it will provide a report with the following information for each guest: name, social media following, website traffic, media appearances, the number of times they have been featured in relevant media outlets. It also said that it was going to develop a scoring system that takes into account the factors identified in Step 1, as well as any additional relevant data, such as academic credentials or industry awards. Now, the list it came back with was pretty good. It roughly matched what you would expect if you asked an AI to find you the 10 most popular people in the space to interview. Now, of course, what it didn't take into account for was the difficulty of getting them on a show. For example, it has people like Elon Musk, but it also took the additional step of clustering them based on whether they were academics or whether they were industry leaders. And so overall, it did provide some interesting utility. Now, I also asked it to plan a last-minute date night for me and my wife in New York, and I gave it some specifications to help it out. I said we wanted to be in the Lower East Side, we wanted a hotel under a certain price, and we wanted restaurants within walking distance of that hotel. It came back with a totally reasonable plan on the basis of that, and so again, I think you're seeing here that specificity matters. Now, this idea of specificity and specialization seems to be something that other people are experiencing as well. When I went back to AgentGPT, which I haven't looked at for a couple weeks, I noticed that instead of just a blank box of do whatever you want, although it still has that, it also has a few different agents that it suggests. It has Platformer GPT, write some code to make a platformer game. Travel GPT, for example, plan a detailed trip to Hawaii. Research GPT, create a comprehensive report of the Nike company. So these are clearly 3 different use cases for coding, for travel, and for research that AgentGPT seems to think are primary use cases for this technology. The emergence of tools like Aomni, which specifically focuses on online research, also suggests that what people are finding is that the more that you can tune these models to go after specific use cases, the more likely to produce good results they are. I think this was almost inevitably going to be the pattern here, where we went from very generalized use cases to actually honing in on the specific things that these tools could be most helpful for and designing new tooling around those use cases. What's more, I'm also seeing a lot more people start to figure out what the relationship between the auto and automation part of this should be versus the human part. Developer Nick Dobos, for example, had a long thread on April 28th that says, GPT and me. A BabyAGI/AutoGPT style agent that creates full human and AI symbiosis. The only AI agent that can actually accomplish things today, because the task execution subagent is me. Become a human and AI agent cyborg. Nick then shows these detailed schematics, and basically what they come down to is that you use the AutoGPT style tool to create the task list, to prioritize it, and then to say what needs to happen. Then, instead of that third step where the AutoGPT just creates a new AI agent to do that task, the human becomes the execution agent. They return that result and then use that to enrich the AutoGPT's information so that it can reprioritize and give the human agent the next task. Now, in some ways, this is all very simple, but what it is trying to actually figure out the process by which these sort of AutoGPT tools are really productivity enhancing without assuming that they're going to be able to do everything all on their own. Remember, these experiments are less than 2 months old, and so it doesn't surprise me that we're seeing both a move to specialization as well as a move to people figuring out just how autonomous AutoGPT should really be. Now, the use case that I mentioned that I haven't really seen anyone talking about is really simple. It's brainstorming. One of the things that I've been underwhelmed with these tools around is their ability to go from an objective to a completed task. It involves a ton of abstraction, a ton of steps, and the fact that you're seeing objective specialization as well as people like Nick experimenting with the human part of this suggests that that's a difficulty for others as well. What I found AutoGPTs to be amazing for, however, is a partner in how to think about accomplishing different objectives. In other words, one of the most valuable parts of letting an AutoGPT like iBabyAGI go off to try to finish an objective is to see how it actually approaches it. It's not just the tasks being completed that's valuable. It's which tasks it thinks are important in the first place. Especially as an entrepreneur or a content creator or anyone who's working in a small environment where they have to be dynamic and do a lot of different things and context switch. Having a brainstorming partner that can help think from 0 to 1 when it comes to important tasks is incredibly valuable. Sure, of course we want these technologies that can do everything for us at the drop of a hat or the snap of fingers, but helping outsource our process brain and make sure that our process is most efficient is actually really valuable as well. Now, one of my biggest questions coming up with AutoGPTs is to what extent ChatGPT with browsing fundamentally changes the need for them. The 2 plugins that OpenAI has been working on for ChatGPT are, of course, Code Interpreter, which we talked about in a previous video, and ChatGPT with browsing. As you would imagine, browsing gives ChatGPT access to the internet, which is one of those major use cases of AutoGPT. Now, it still doesn't mean it's necessarily designed to auto-prompt itself to figure out the tasks around an objective, but it's not impossible to me that what we'll really find is that a big part of what feels so amazing about AutoGPTs, at least right now, is the fact that they were connected and can go out and search the internet on our behalves. With GPT-4 with browsing rolling out more fully, I think we'll have much more of a chance to understand that in the weeks to come. All right, guys, that is it for the AI breakdown today. Go check out iBabyAGI. Nate Chan did a great job with it. If nothing else, you will have a ton of fun just experimenting and learning and seeing what it does. If this video was valuable, please like and subscribe to the channel. Go follow the podcast on Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen. That's the AI Breakdown. Come back tomorrow for another dose of the AI Breakdown Brief and the AI Breakdown. Until then, peace.